friends. Welcome back to Crime Adjacent Season 8, the case of the Michigan Nightstalker. Here's where things stand. Swanson's wound was remarkably similar to Nikki's. It was uncanny. Nikki, you might recall from previous episodes, was the one person who actually tracked down the zip tie killer, who, yes, is still out there. She discovered he was a cop in Marin County, just north of the Golden Gate Bridge. She went to knock on his door, which always reminded me in a way of Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs, like ballsy. "Hello, Mr. Gum." Only, instead of being trapped in the creepiest basement of all time, the killer shot Nikki in the thigh and bolted, disappearing into yet another identity in yet another state or country, I guess. Who knows? But we do know he's still out there. He still sends her letters. We know he still listens. And he should know, thanks to Nikki, thanks to all of you and your tips, that his days are numbered. Sorry. This obviously brings back a lot because, like I said, these injuries, they looked and sounded so similar. Well, I guess Swanson was stabbed instead of shot, but it's the same location, more or less, in the femoral neuromuscular bundle so close to life and death. I asked Swanson later, much later, when I returned for the story, if she minded me sharing her information, and she said it's fine. We've become friends, but like I said, later. Much, much later. It took some time. Because at the time, in September 2024, in the hospital in downtown Petoskey, having just been stabbed and having just had the clown creeper slip through the cracks once again, Swanson had a different message for me. "Leave," she said. "Get out of town. Today." And so I did. Here's the story. But first, hey, thanks for stopping by the Left Coast Crime Conference last week. What a blast to be on the podcasting panel to discuss thrillers and podcasting and video, and what an even bigger blast to get to meet some of you. Thanks for coming out. That was really cool. Can't wait for the next one. From San Francisco, this is Crime Adjacent, the never-ending true crime story told weekly. I'm Chase Patrick. Big question today. What's in a name? And how much does that have to do with which cases receive attention and which slip under the radar? In the 1980s, in the general Los Angeles area, there was a guy who would sneak around homes in the middle of the night, much like the clown creeper did on Walloon Lake in 2024. According to police and witness statements, this prowler would look for open windows or doors and then creep into homes, often watching people sleep before waking them up with a flashlight and a gun. As these break-ins escalated in number and violence, police and the media began to warn people. Be on the lookout for the Valley Intruder, or the walk-in killer, as they called him, because by then, in the mid-1980s, these break-ins had escalated to murder. Have you heard those names? The Valley Intruder? The walk-in killer? It sounded in a way very much like what was happening in northern Michigan. It started with break-ins and then quickly moved on to violence like sexual assaults and then quickly moved on to murder. Now, you might not have heard of the walk-in killer, but I'm positive that you've heard the name he would soon become called in Los Angeles and around the world. On July 24th, 1985, the Los Angeles Times published a very important story with a very important headline: Nightstalker linked to fifth killing. This was the first known publication of the moniker for a killer, Richard Ramirez, who would absolutely freak out the entire state that summer, the Nightstalker. I remember as a child of the 1980s in Ridgewood, California, way up in Northern California, seeing this guy's wanted picture in the newspaper. It was terrifying. Ask any child of the California 80s, and they'll probably have a similar story. The moment they saw this image of a bug-eyed crazy person who was out there, just outside your bedroom window, searching for ways to get in, to get you. But the thing is, the Nightstalker, and this specific name, the Nightstalker, was not a singular occurrence at the time and in the area. Because just before Richard Ramirez began his crimes in the mid-1980s, there was another Nightstalker who was prowling California, doing the same thing, creeping around homes, looking for unlocked doors, breaking in, sexual assaults, murder. At first, in the early 1970s, this guy was known as the Visalia Ransacker for his break-in spree in Central California. This guy moved up to Northern California where he worked as a police officer and terrorized communities from the Bay Area to Sacramento with break-ins and sexual assaults, more than 50 over the span of just a few years. After murdering a couple in 1979, he fled south again to the coastal area of Santa Barbara, where he simply continued his spree of break-ins and sexual assaults and murder. On July 29, 1981, the Daily Times Advocate newspaper in the coastal area published this headline: "Stalker cited in 2 deaths." It went on to detail how someone had broken into the home of a couple in Goleta, California, just north of Santa Barbara. And yes, for true crime diehards, this is the same exact Goleta where that Netflix documentary that just came out had Zodiac suspect Arthur Lee Allen killing people on the beach, while he also kidnapped and drugged child friends who waited in his car. It was very strange. Not childhood friends like buddies, but like literal children, family friends he was somehow allowed to travel up and down the state with. It was weird. The kid said he molested them along the way. The point is, there was a lot going on in California at the time, like a traveling troupe of serial killers wandering the entire state, sometimes the exact same roads. And that is what I wanted to get at. What I'm leading to and how all these disconnected pieces of mayhem and murder all connect back to the Michigan cases. That story in the Daily Times Advocate was the first publication of the moniker, the Nightstalker. But again, they didn't mean Richard Ramirez. They meant the Visalia Ransacker, who became known as the East Area Rapist, who then moved south and became known as the Nightstalker for a few years in the early 1980s, before Ramirez arrived on the scene and took over that name. Later, when Ramirez was captured in 1985, there was confusion. 2 Nightstalkers working in the Southern California region. So the earlier one, he became known as the original Nightstalker, to tell them apart, the classic Coke, if you will, of serial murder, I guess. I know, it's also confusing and strange, which is exactly why esteemed crime writer Michelle McNamara gave the original Nightstalker, aka the East Area Rapist, aka the Visalia Ransacker, a new name, something more memorable, something she hoped would stir up interest in his decades-long spree of crimes so that police would finally nail this guy. Again, what's in a name? Turns out, a lot. McNamara's new moniker did indeed help bring more attention to this guy, and soon enough, thanks to an old rape kit and some genealogy testing that would narrow down the pool of family members and then in the end suspects, Joseph D'Angelo was arrested in 2018, revealing the identity, for the first time, of the Golden State Killer. Listeners of this show know I'm keenly interested in this facet of crime, how these murderers get their names, and what, perhaps, this says not so much of the murderers themselves, but about what we, collectively, think of these people. Stalkers, phantoms, monsters, evil demons, boogeymen in the night. Anything but what they really are. Men. By and large, mostly, nearly always, just horrible, horrible men living next door. Maybe it's easier to invent a cultural totem of fear rather than confront the everyday men in our everyday circles. I don't know, but it happens all the time. It happened in Los Angeles. The Daily Times Advocate named the Nightstalker first, then the Los Angeles Times did it again for a different stalker, and then cops had to go back and retrofit the original Nightstalker onto the first guy, until McNamara came up with something better to encapsulate everything, the Golden State Killer. Something similar happened in Michigan with this case. On Walloon Lake in 2024, the break-in foot rubber and shoe stealer in a clown mask was known locally in whispers and rumors as the Clown Creeper, which weird, but also light, short of heft, mocking in a way, and not really explanatory of the real crimes, which were terrifying. But when the murders began, first with Allison Barnes and then again with Ebony Astor, or I guess that was an attempted murder, a new name emerged. Something that better fit his crimes, something that really freaked people out and drew international media attention to the small northern Michigan community. The first known publication of this name came that Saturday, September 28, 2024, when Walloon Lake resident and popular billionaire podcaster Roger Michaels took to his TikTok account and told his audience of tech bros that his tiny home was under siege. He warned people, stay away from Michigan, don't come, it's unsafe. He said to his audience of 7 million listeners, there is a serial killer out here, breaking into cabins and murdering people. They call him the Michigan Nightstalker. They didn't, in fact, call him that. No one did. He was known as the Clown Creeper locally on the lake in town. It was Michaels who coined this name, as far as I could tell, and it had the effect he wanted. People went crazy. News crews from all over suddenly appeared in town. Vacationers left. Locals boarded up their doors, cleaned off their guns, and kept neighborhood watch parties all night. The Michigan Nightstalker was out there on Walloon, breaking into cabins in Petoskey, hunting women. The town was spinning out of control. Which was odd, because that Saturday night, or I guess that Sunday morning, the morning the Creeper or the Nightstalker broke into the cabin of Deputy Swanson, the authorities finally had a name, a real name, the name of an actual person, not some hobgoblin of the night. Tim Meeks. This was their guy, no doubt. Based on my stupid idea, Swanson served as a cabin decoy, and it worked. The Nightstalker broke in and was about to rub her feet when, well, everything went haywire. The Creeper or Stalker or whatever, Christ, what do I even call him at this point? I'm confused. I'm going with the Nightstalker now because that's ultimately what he became known as, what people think when they think of this case. That morning, the Stalker, I did it again. That morning, he stabbed Swanson and managed to escape, unheard, into the woods, or the water, or the road, like a specter vanishing into the night, while Sheriff Press and I took Swanson to the hospital. That Sunday morning, after everything settled down, I visited her. Press said Swanson would make a full recovery. I poked my head into her room and just as quickly poked my head back out again, because Swanson held up a hand, as if to stop me. Get out, she said. Get out of this room. Get out of this town. We don't want you here. We have a suspect now. I saw him with my own eyes. It's over. As soon as they release me, I'm getting the hell out of this town, and you should too. Now go. Like I said, they did indeed have a name now. Tim Meeks, just as Swanson had suspected all along. Remember, her early profile detailed this guy to a T. It was uncanny. Now, with his picture as the actual suspect making the rounds, it was only a matter of time. He couldn't hide for long. Swanson was right. This case was more or less over. There was no dramatic showdown, no Hollywood shootout in some abandoned building. The case just ended. Even Press told me to take off. There was not much to do at this point. I felt horrible, guilty. It was my plan to have Swanson serve as a decoy that got her stabbed. Yes, we almost caught the guy and we had a name now, but there was really nothing I could do at this point. I hate to break it to you. Cases sometimes just end. A test comes back positive for fingerprints or DNA. A name is given in an interview. A tiny remembered detail jogs a memory and a face. A seasonal worker on Walloon Lake with a history of peeping by the name of Tim Meeks was the Clown Creeper, and then, for a short period of time, the Michigan Nightstalker. It was a sudden, violent explosion of stalking and assault and murder that just seemed to end as quickly as it began. Swanson and Press were right. I was no longer needed. I said goodbye to Swanson, who simply shut her eyes, and made my way to the parking lot that Sunday morning. I still had to visit the Hemingway cabin, the whole reason I was here. I planned to make good on my promise that day, driving by before catching the next flight to New York. Claire was there, and I was itching to drop her a line, and we had a live show at Carnegie Hall. I was thinking about all this, making my way to my rental car. The case was just over. It didn't feel entirely complete for some reason, but life is like that, I guess. No neat bows, just onward to the next thing. So I'm in the parking lot now, and I'm about to open my car door when I heard a cry, like a shriek, something wild and guttural. A woman near a black SUV nearby screamed, my baby, help." She's going absolutely bonkers now, banging on her car window. There's no one else around, just this lady and me and her black SUV in the back of the hospital parking lot. The woman stood about 5 feet tall tops and was just frantic, somehow pounding on the back seat window just behind the driver's side window and pulling me in at the same time. "Help me," she said, "help. I think she's choking." Okay, so this escalated quickly. There's a baby locked in a car, possibly choking, a woman absolutely freaking out. Tiny alarm bells went off somewhere deep inside of me, like a danger warning from a past life, from the before times. No one ever suspects a shouting, panicked mother, but there was something so strange about this. This felt so real, the panic. So I get closer. She pulls me in. I can't see anything. The windows are tinted so dark. I press my face to the glass, and it occurred to me in that moment just how unhelpful that is. Like, there's a baby trapped inside, possibly choking, and I need to first see it for my own eyes as opposed to breaking the glass or running for help or calling 911. Why do we do that? Why did I do that? I don't know. But I'm pretty sure it saved my life, because I immediately saw two things happen. One, there was no baby in the back seat. It was empty. Even through the tinted glass with my face pressed against the window, I could see there was nothing at all in the back seat of this SUV. And two, just as I turned to figure out what this lady was up to, I saw the arcing curvature of a golf club slicing through the air, headed my way. I ducked just as the head of a ham-sized driver collided with the metal door, leaving a dent in its wake. That would have caved in my eyeballs, I thought to myself. I grabbed the shaft of the club and pushed it backwards, essentially turning the whole thing into a jabbing stick. The pointy end pressed against the woman's chest and she fell to the ground, her face a mask of surprise and fear, as if her plan to dent my temples had run into reality. I still had the golf club in my hand as I towered over her as she lay on the ground. She scrambled back on the pavement, holding out her hands. "Please don't," she said. "He made me. I actually do have a baby, I swear, but she's not here. Please." He said he'd hurt her. I'd been in town only a few days, but I knew exactly who he meant. I'd been fixated on Tim Meeks and the Creeper and the Michigan Nightstalker so long that I had nearly forgotten. But all these other names suddenly came tumbling back. Jimmy Ball, Eddie Devereaux, Emily Willis, Mr. Randolph, Mrs. Harris. And now this lady, scared out of her mind and shaking with fear as her plan to carve a canyon through my brain went sideways. I dropped the club and said, "Bill LaBoa, he got to you, didn't he?" She looked confused. "Bill who?" I might not have actually helped catch Tim Meeks. In fact, my decoy plan almost made it all worse, with Swanson in this very hospital because of me. Smooth, I know. Still, I could do something about this Bill LaBoa guy. He was still running this town from behind the scenes, and I couldn't just leave. Not now, not with so many people caught up in his schemes. This, I thought, would be easy. At the very least, I can put an end to one of Sheriff Press's problems as she tried to catch Meeks once and for all and stop the short-lived reign of terror inflicted by the newly named Michigan Nightstalker. I helped the lady up. "Tell him you got me. Tell him I'm leaving." The lady nodded, still frightened, and got into her car and drove away. I watched her go and looked up at the hospital as she motored away, and I wondered if Swanson was up there, in one of the rooms, watching this whole thing play out. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is when it occurred to me. I had not only gotten Swanson stabbed, I had just put her in the fridge. Like I said, smooth. Next time on Crime Adjacent. If you've ever read a thriller or watched one of those Liam Neeson revenge movies, you're probably familiar with the phrase, put her in the fridge, even if you've never heard of it or know what that term means. Trust me, you've seen the phenomenon play out, and it pained me to think I had literally just done it myself. It all goes back to a comic book and a famous scene. There's the hero who does something, and his girlfriend gets stuffed in a refrigerator in a brutal death. He swears to avenge her death and goes on a killing spree of revenge. I was thinking of this because in the parking lot, watching the lady leave with the black SUV and a made-up baby, and looking up at the hospital window and wondering if Swanson would be okay, I didn't just hatch a plan to teach local high school cyberbully Bill LeBoa a little lesson. No, I was going to catch the Michigan Nightstalker that very night. From San Francisco, this is Chase Patrick with a reminder. It's not crime, it's crime adjacent. I'll see you next week.